Emil, so with you being, so into your music, being really high in the music level, what would you say if you could choose a song or genre to portray harvest here? What would it be?
I think like everyone always expects me to go the classical route because music students, Mozart, Vivaldi, Beethoven. But honestly, I don't know if you've watched Forrest Gump, but that classic scene when they're sitting there in the rainforest and they're waiting to attack, and Fortunate Son starts playing. It's that kind of thing. Everyone needs to be ready at their battle stations. Everything's about to go down. Yeah. That's how I feel like when I drive into work. Usually, I might be a little bit late, so I'm rushing into work and I'm playing that on the radio, getting ready for for the everything to go. But in terms of the specific type of music, I am going to do the stereotypical thing and say it's a lot like choral music. Like for me, almost like Thomas Tallis, Spem and Oleum, where there's so many different voices, each of them singing a unique melody, but all of them playing just an equal and equally important part in the sound as a whole. And that's how the farm works during the harvest. You've got the farm workers picking the grapes, very important. You've got the farm workers transporting the grapes to the cellar. You've got the cellar team processing everything. You've got Jamie and Mark, who are essentially the conductors of the choral group, and then I feel like the tasting room is kind of like the speakers playing the music in a sense. Definitely. But every entity here at Waterford plays an equal role in representing the product, and that's why I think the choral music is probably the best thing to represent harvest time and the majesty of it. Yeah. You've been here for a while now. Quite intrigued. In the while you've been working here, what's the most surprising thing that you've learned about harvest and how it unfolds?
I would definitely say, when I started working here, I didn't really know much about wine. I kind of just knew red and white and the colors of it, of course. And I thought, the color actually came from the juice inside the grape. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned, that it actually doesn't. It comes from the skin. There's completely different grapes that we've got here. We've got smaller grapes with thicker skins, bigger grapes with thinner skins. So that was definitely an awesome thing that I can learn, that I tell almost all of my guests, because a lot of people, color is such an important part of the art of wine, especially when it comes to all the different colors of our red wines. Learning that it's actually the skin that has a massive impact on that was absolutely incredible for me. Something so small but does so much to the wine.
Yeah, I think someone throws a spanner in the works. Exactly. Introduces you to the rosemary, where it's essentially a white wine, but you use red grapes to make it. It really throws you off.
It's unreal. How would you say we use the harvest to help guests connect with the beautiful estate here at Waterford?
I think the harvest time is the easiest way to help guests connect, because they're actually part of the process. Definitely. I always love to say that, especially when I do the cellar tours. If you take the guests through the center of the courtyard here, it's so easy to show them how they actually play a crucial role in this whole process, because the wines are made at the back there by the stainless steel tanks. They're fertilized there. All the grapes are brought in early in the morning. They actually physically see the bins being brought into the cellar there. And then in the red wine cathedral over there, they're aged, and they're also bottled at the back that side. And then everything's just enjoyed outside here.
Exactly.
So they're just as important part of the process as us, who actually plays an active role in it. Exactly. So it's not that hard when they can sit and sip their glass of cab, when they see the bins of cab roll in, and just picture that whole process in their mind.
Especially when they're in the center, they've got all the wine, they've got everything around them, they've got the brilliant views, so there's nothing more that is needed.
Yeah, for sure. Considering we're talking about harvest, what's the one harvest secret or tip that you'd like to share with guests?
I would say the one thing that I would want to, if I could, tell all of my guests is that nobody realizes how much love and enthusiasm actually goes into harvesting the grapes and with them going through. People kind of just think they get harvested, they put in the cellar, and they go through a very basic kind of way here, but it's very different. There's people out there every morning, they're up in the morning, they're enthusiastic, they don't half pick the grapes, they pick all of them, they're making sure it's the best of the best. So definitely, showing people that love, especially with them sitting here, we're giving you a story, we're not just pouring the wine, there we go, enjoy it. It's really telling you what we've got going on here with all of the brilliant, hand harvesting sections that we've got. It's just unreal with the amount of energy that we've actually got going.
It's actually insane.
Yeah. And what would you say, being manager here, so much about the estate, what would you say is kind of a secret or tip that you would hope to tell everyone?
I think it kind of builds onto yours. Harvest is kind of like I think people don't realize that harvest is like the start of a bottle of wine's journey.
Definitely.
Sure, the grapes come in, we process them, we ferment them, they go into French oak barrels possibly, and from there they go into the bottle. But that's not a process that happens like that in a week.
Exactly.
It's something that takes more than a year. I mean, some of our red wines spend 18 to 22 months in French oak barrels, following which they kept in bottles for another 5 years, following which they wait in the tasting room to be enjoyed by the guests. So it's not something that happens overnight. Harvest is it's almost like it's never ending. It's like this infinite loop of just queuing and queuing and queuing the next session of harvest, and it all merges into one. So I think if there's one just like interesting fact I could divulge about harvest, is that it's a continuous process. It's not just February and March. It's forever. If that makes sense.
Definitely,
yeah. Yeah.
All right, and speaking of harvest and the enthusiasm and love, how would you say that you can kind of bring that and help, push that in, times where we're working so hard? How can you elevate that sort of enthusiasm and love that we've got going here?
I think being a manager now is a lot easier, considering that I worked on the floor with you guys before. Your harvest is such a special time. Obviously it's great weather, it's hot, it's tough to work, and it does make the hours take a lot longer, and the hustle becomes a lot harder.
Of course, yeah.
But you know what? Honestly, since I've been working here, the most special thing about harvest is it's that the hard hustle that binds the crew together, the whole floor, the people that work on floor. I'm sure the people in the cellar as well. But especially for us working on the floor, you've had your hard hustle throughout the day, had a couple of difficult tables.
Yeah, of course.
But you know that at the end of the day, there's gonna be a nice glass of wine waiting for you, and you enjoy it with your peers around the fountain. That's where you really do most of the bonding. And that's like your reward. It's not just the glass of wine. Sure, that's the medium, but the bonding. I mean, my flatmates worked there with me. My best mates I've met at this wine farm, and it's all through that medium of that little reward at the end of the day after a tough day.
Yeah, and even as we speak, it's lifelong friends. I mean, when I started working here, working with you, it was the craziest thing. Of course, I'm a little bit younger than you, so it was like I didn't know who you were. You kind of scared me when I got you, and now it's like you're my older brother. So it's it's so awesome, the people that you meet here, and just to have something that's different towards your normal friend group. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I always like to say that when most people start here, they need to pay financial bills, but eventually this place starts paying your emotional bills.
Of course.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most rewarding part of the harvest season during the busy time?
You've definitely touched on it, especially after a long day of work, you've got that glass of wine waiting for you on certain days. And that's really the important part. It's not just the glass of wine, it's the people you're having the wine with. It's the people that you're speaking to, the people that you're helping, finishing up duties at the end of the day. And as you said, it's not just a workplace. Of course, when you start here, you think, okay, well, I'm going to go in, do my work and come out. But you actually want to go in, do your work, stay for a bit after work, just have a nice time with your friends, and it starts becoming your family. And it's just so awesome to have somewhere where you actually really want to go in and work, and you want to tell people about wine, and you want to teach people about wine. And it's really awesome. The end of the day sort of activities that we've got going on here, it's just really awesome. And on your take, what would you say is an important part of that?
I think the most rewarding thing for me in a harvest is obviously, like, I'm just going to double back to music. That's my go-to.
Of course.
I always like to say that Mark and Jamie and the whole cellar team, they like the recording artists. They're busy making the music in there, and it's beautiful stuff they make, right? Got some hits.
Definitely big ones.
And then the tasting room team, we kind of like the album cover, and that's just as important as a CD. You're not going to go to a CD store and that all cracked CD cover there with the crusty all black album.
That's going to be pushed aside.
You don't want, that's in a dusty corner somewhere. So we also we play a very integral role there, and I think it's actually a privilege. You can say, we were part of that team, the harvest of 2025. We were the album cover. We received the people. We welcomed them to the product, and the product here is just it's an insane blend of music.
Of course.
So I think it's just an absolute honor.
Beautiful.
Yeah.